Welcome to our election focus. With so many races and so many candidates jockeying for position in the upcoming primary, we weren't able to get the in-depth conversation that we had during the Annapolis city election. So this time, we're shaking it up a little bit. We identified key challenged races and invited all of the candidates to pitch us. In each 10-minute recording, we present a single question to the candidate. I am a new voter. Why should I vote for you? And after that, the candidate has up to 10 minutes to pitch themselves, and if they run out of time, we hang up on them. It's very simple and mildly therapeutic. Joining us today is Kathy Rogers. She's a Republican running for Anne Arundel County State's Attorney. Hey, I'm a new voter here in Anne Arundel County. Don't know a whole lot about the State's Attorney's office, but I know you're running for it, so why should I vote for you?
Hi, my name is Kathy Rogers, and I am running for Anne Arundel County State's Attorney. This position is a position that's extremely important to the citizens of this county. The State's Attorney is the top law enforcement official for the county. The office employs over 100 people, including about 50 attorneys. Many people don't realize, but the mission of the State's Attorney's office is to prosecute criminals and to make our communities safer. So it is a very, very important election and an important position for all of the citizens of Anne Arundel County. I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and why I would like to be your next State's Attorney. I grew up here in Anne Arundel County. I went to public school here. I attended Arundel Senior High School. I grew up in a large family. I had 4 brothers. And I grew up in a family where public service was something that was really, really emphasized. It was emphasized, though, through actions rather than words. It wasn't something my parents talked about, but they were very strong role models in that regard. My dad was one of the first Citizens of the Year in Crofton. He was a deacon in our church. My mom was always volunteering somewhere. She was at the convalescent center. She was at the church. It was just the kind of atmosphere that we grew up in. So after I finished high school, I went on to the University of Maryland, where I started studying criminal justice and began to realize how much I loved the law. And the reason I tell you about my background and my parents as role models was that my love of the law was combined with that fundamental value that I grew up with about public service. And so as I graduated from college and went on to law school, it was actually that combination that let me know that my mission was going to be something to do with the law and public service, and being a prosecutor seemed like the perfect fit. So after I finished law school, my first job was as an assistant state's attorney here in Anne Arundel County. I went on to serve the citizens of this county for the next 28 years. I am responsible for taking some of the most dangerous murderers, rapists, and child abusers off our streets. In my career, during my 28-year career in the state's attorney's office here in the county, I headed up our child abuse unit and our sexual offense unit. I was the DNA expert for the county. I was the DNA liaison to the FBI. I successfully prosecuted the first PCR DNA case in the state of Maryland back in the 1990s. That defendant, who had murdered a woman in her home in Arundel, is now serving a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. As a DNA expert, I also handled many what we call cold case hits, because when I started my career, we didn't have a DNA database. Almost no one knew what DNA was. So when the databases came into existence, we received a grant, I believe it was in 2005, to take all the samples that had been collected from cases and enter them into the database. And at that time, we started getting hits, matches to people who had committed crimes that occurred as early as the 1980s. So I personally supervised and or handled each and every one of those cases that occurred and was a cold case hit. So I was prosecuting rape cases that happened back in the 80s, in the 2000s. I left the state's attorney's office in 2015, and when I left the office, I was the deputy state's attorney. That position obviously involved a lot of administrative work. I was second in charge of the office, and like I said, there were over 100 people and 50 attorneys that I was supervising in 3 different physical locations. But during my time as a deputy state's attorney, I continued to prosecute cases. Even in my last year in the office, I personally handled 2 murder cases, which both resulted in guilty verdicts from juries. One of those cases involved a 2-month-old baby that had been killed here in the county. It was very important to me, although I had administrative duties, to continue to be involved in prosecuting cases, because that is the core mission of the state's attorney's office. I bring a very unique experience of having spent decades prosecuting every type of criminal case in Anne Arundel County, from drunk drivers to murderers. My opponent in the Republican primary spent his career in Prince George's County and Baltimore City. He's only worked in this county for about 3.5 years and has only prosecuted a small handful of cases. My dedication to this community is unmatched. It was my honor to serve the citizens of this county for almost 3 decades and to make our community a safer place. Having said all that, I've never been involved in politics, but I became motivated to run for a number of reasons. First and foremost is what I've already told you, my dedication to this community that I've been a part of for almost 50 years. I not only grew up here, but I stayed here and I raised my family here. And now my grandkids live here too. I attend church here, I've volunteered in my kids' schools, and coached their sports teams. This community is part of me, it's part of who I am, and I am part of this community. It matters to me. I'm not a politician, and I never will be. I am running because I've seen the mismanagement and the unethical behavior occurring in the state's attorney's office in the last 3.5 years. The ethics of the state's attorney should never be called into question. I, like many, have been alarmed at the numerous headlines raising questions about the unethical practices in that office. As your state's attorney, I will remove politics, politicians, and lobbyists from the office. I will refocus the office on its core mission, which is simple. It's to put criminals behind bars. Currently, almost 80% of all charges in the district court are not being prosecuted. They're being dropped by the state's attorney's office. Of the remaining 20% that are being prosecuted, there was a 42% increase in the rate of not guilties between 2016 and 2017. This is a complete disservice to our citizens. I believe it is the result of the current state's attorney doing away with the training of new prosecutors. He decided that a philosophy of sink or swim was the way to go, and clearly it's not, because the office is sinking. Another reason I'm running is that the office has lost sight of its mission with regard to the opioid epidemic. The role of prosecutors is to lock up drug dealers for the longest possible time. Education and treatment are really, really important tools in the fight, but other agencies are specifically tasked with those roles and, frankly, are better at those roles. I've talked to middle school teachers who have told me that when prosecutors come in to speak to middle schoolers, their eyes glaze over. We don't know how to reach those kids as well as their teachers do. That's what they are trained to do. But what prosecutors are trained to do is prosecute criminal cases. Only prosecutors can put drug dealers in jail. There are 50 prosecutors, a finite number, and they need to be doing that job. Under my administration, we'll redirect our resources to getting the maximum sentences for dealers of the substances that are causing so much death and destruction among our families. I will work hard to keep guns out of the hands of criminals while respecting the Second Amendment rights of the law-abiding citizens of this county. I will partner with law enforcement and Homeland Security to identify criminals who are in our country illegally, especially gang members, and I will work to enforce all our laws. I grew up in this county. I've lived here for almost 50 years and raised my children here. I am the only candidate who has spent my entire career making this county a safer place for all of our families. I was honored to serve my community for 28 years, but there's more work to be done, and I have the dedication and unique qualifications to do it right. I'm asking for your vote in the Republican primary on June 26th. Early voting starts on June 14th. Let your voice be heard, because together we can make our county a safer place.
For more information about Kathy Rogers, please visit her website, electkathyrogers.com. That's ELECTKATHYROGERS.com.